Hello friends, today I'm reviewing the Pickleball Apes Pro Line Energy S, the much anticipated sequel to the original Pro Line Energy. And this time, instead of an extra long and narrow design, the S model comes in a hybrid shape with a reduced swing weight and better maneuverability. There's also a new patent-pending technology for the surface texture which gives this paddle better spin. So stick around to find out how Pickleball Apes is establishing itself as one of the best new paddle companies of 2023. The Pro Line Energy S costs $170, and you can use my code JOHNQ for a 10% discount. Compared to the ultra-elongated original Pro Line Energy, the S model comes in a shorter, wider shape that falls between the standard elongated and square paddles. So it's a hybrid shape similar to popular brands such as the 6-0 Double Black Diamond, Rhombus R1, Vatic Flash, and Volair paddles. Instead of going through each specific metric, I'll show those on the left side of the screen here so that I can focus on more general trends. The S model is 0.6 inches shorter and 0.6 inches wider than the original Pro Line Energy. The handle was shortened 3/4 of an inch, but at 5.5 inches, there's still enough real estate for a two-handed backhand. Also, the neck tapers up instead of flaring out, so you can get an extra 1/2 inch on the handle by overwrapping it up to the USAP stamp. The grip circumference is standard, and the handle length has an octagonal shape. The S model uses the same non-standard core thickness as the original at 16.5 millimeters, so it's slightly thicker than standard paddles. With less length comes a lighter swing weight, which puts it in the range of other hybrid paddles, although on the higher end of that category. The S model's swing weight falls at the 57th percentile in my database, and when you're swinging it, it's going to feel a lot like the 6-0 Black Diamond Power, the Pro Drive Ghost, and Rhombus R1.16. The S model's twist weight falls at the 60th percentile in my database, which is also typical for hybrid paddles, and is about the same as the Rhombus R1.16, 6-0 Double Black Diamond 14mm, and the Volair Forza. This paddle is thermoformed, which means that heat and pressure are used to cure the paddle components together, and a single carbon fiber seam extends along the entire perimeter, increasing paddle strength and providing various performance perks. So you get all the benefits of thermoforming, including a larger sweet spot, more power and pop, and a more solid, stable feel. Narrow cell polypropylene is used for the core, which adds density and strength, translating into more responsiveness and power. The main selling point of this paddle is the use of Kevlar on the surface layers. It's a hybrid Kevlar carbon fiber weave, so a twill cloth composed of carbon fiber toes interlaced with Kevlar. I covered the unique properties of Kevlar in detail in my review of the original Pro Line Energy, so I'll just hit the key points here. Kevlar has some special properties that make it very tough and impact resistant, as you would expect because it's used in bulletproof clothing. It also has better shock absorption than carbon fiber. So the end result is a paddle that's more impact resistant and absorbs vibrations better. A raw texture is placed over the top of the Kevlar fabric with a peel ply. Zooming in under a microscope, you can see the texture over the top of the twill weave, and zooming in further, you can see the standard peel ply embossing that's used on most raw carbon fiber paddle faces. But this is something that's been improved since the first Pro Line Energy model. The owner of Pickleball Apes told me that he's using a new patent-pending technology for the peel ply, unique to Kevlar fiber cloths, and involves a more elaborate curing technology. The goal with this new texture was to get better spin and more durability. The original Apes already had top-tier spin, coming in just above 2,000 RPM, but the new Apes are now around 2,200, putting them near the top of my spin chart. I did receive some pre-production models, and one of those got the most ridiculous spin I've ever seen. One of my serves clocked in at over 2,700 RPM. I had to go back and triple check the video to make sure this was correct. At that rate, it's even hard to get a precise RPM number with my fastest camera recording at 240 frames per second. Anyway, the production model that I received was toned down a bit. To the touch, they felt the same in terms of grittiness, but I suspect that the RZ levels were different between the prototype and the production model. But even for the production model, it is curious why my spin results are so much different than Chris's over at the Pickleball Studio, which came in at nearly 500 RPM less than mine. Our results, Chris and mine, generally tend to be pretty close on the order of 100 to 200 RPM, but 500 is way out of the ordinary. There's always going to be some variability between paddles, but it shouldn't be that big. It probably has more to do with body mechanics and individual differences between Chris and myself. Hopefully we'll figure out what's going on as more data comes in, but for now, all I can say is that judging from the 4 S model paddles I tested, they do get better spin than the original elongated Apes. And most of the feedback I've heard from owners of the original elongated Apes is that they do have very good spin. So in terms of the spin durability of the S model, I can't speak to that yet since I've only been playing with these paddles for a few weeks. I can tell you that the original Apes seem to show standard wear for raw surfaces. After about 2 months of play, I started noticing some smoothing of the texture by touch, and I retested it and the spin had dropped to 1800 RPM down from 2000. And that's about what I've seen for most raw carbon fiber paddles. But like I said, they're using a new curing process on the S model, which has definitely improved the spin and hopefully also the durability. And even if the S does lose 200 RPM, it'll still be top tier. Okay, next up is power. I put these paddles through the same testing I use for all the others, which involves using a radar gun to measure serve speed and taking an average. I hit these serves as hard as I can, but within legal restrictions, so underhanded so that the highest point of the paddle head is below the wrist joint where it bends. The Proline Energy S does hit hard. Average serve speed is 55.6 miles per hour, which is slightly higher than the original Proline Energy. That surprised me since longer paddles with more swing weight will generally have more power potential than shorter ones. The difference isn't that large, so maybe I just had a livelier arm the day I tested the S, but regardless, it does have good power. And you can see in this chart, it sits in the area between the 6.0 Black Diamond Power and the Gearbox Pro Series. There was a noticeable jump and pop for this paddle compared to the original Proline Energy. This is probably the result of lower swing weight and the ability to generate quicker short swings. Average punch volley speed for the S came in at 35.3 miles per hour, placing it in the top 10 category in my database, directly comparable to paddles such as the 6.0 Double Black Diamond 14mm and Rhombus R1 Pulsar. The balance point for the Apes S, which is the paddle's center of mass as measured from the bottom of the handle, is 24.2 centimeters or 9.5 inches. This location is well balanced, so the paddle doesn't feel either head heavy or head light. All right, let's move on to how this paddle performs during gameplay. One of the things I loved most about the original elongated Apes was the plush feel. It seems that the use of Kevlar in the surface cloth gives these paddles a more muted feel, which makes sense because Kevlar is more flexible and has better vibration damping than carbon fiber. I'm currently experimenting with quantifying how a paddle's surface feels when hitting a ball. So kind of that spectrum between a plush or muted feel on one side and a stiff or crisp feel on the other. I'm pretty sure that this feel is not so much caused by the actual surface hardness of the paddle, but has more to do with the vibration, frequency, and response that passes through the paddle when it hits a ball. So basically, plush-feeling paddles like the Yola Hyperion and the Apes Proline Energy send less vibration into your hand when hitting a ball. And for the Apes, this could relate to the vibration damping effects of Kevlar. I'd say that the S model is definitely less plush than the original elongated Proline Energy, but it's still more plush and muted than other hybrid thermoform paddles. I do agree with the reviewer David Yang from Tickle that in terms of plushness, the Apes S sits between Gen 1 hybrid paddles like the Rhombus R1.16 and Vatic Prism Flash on the one hand, versus the most muted of the hybrid thermoform paddles on the other hand, such as the Rhombus R1 Nova. So it bridges the gap between Gen 1 paddles and thermoformed paddles in terms of how forgiving the paddle face feels. And what this translates to during gameplay is good drops, dinking, and resets. At the same time, just like the original Pro Line Energy, this paddle is very responsive when it comes to speed ups and power shots. Power is top tier, which allows you to put away the ball when there's an opportunity or to add some speed to your serves and drives. Pop is good on this paddle too, so speed ups at the kitchen are always an option. As expected, the sweet spot on the S model is wider than the original elongated Pro Line Energy, which matches the dimensions of the paddle. To me, the sweet spot is comparable to the Rhombus R1 Nova and R1 Pulsar and the Vatic Pro Flash, but not quite as large as the 6.0 Double Black Diamond. In terms of aesthetics, just like the original Pro Line Energy, I think this is a great looking paddle. The twill weave on the paddle surface that combines dark gray carbon fiber and red Kevlar is a really nice touch. All right, so first I want to say this. What a year it's been for pickleball. Paddle technology is light years ahead of where it was just a year ago. We've seen so many great paddles released in 2023, and they just keep getting better. I'm happy to see Pickleball Apes in this space providing great, innovative products. As I've mentioned in previous videos, the original Apes Pro Line Energy has been my primary paddle for months. I just love where it sits on the power control spectrum, and its muted feel gives me more confidence with my finesse game. So far, the Apes S model hasn't moved to my number 1 spot. It's up there close, around 2 or 3 in my paddle rotation. So right now I'm carrying around the original Pro Line Energy, the Pro Line Energy S, and the Gearbox Pro Power Elongated in my bag. If I'm feeling loose and confident in my game and I'm looking for maximum power and aggression, I'll use the Gearbox. I'll use the Pro Line Energy S for a little more muted power and better maneuverability if I know there'll be a lot of fast kitchen exchanges. But if my partner needs me to be more solid and consistent, or if I'm under any kind of pressure like a tournament situation, I'll grab the original Pro Line Energy every time. In my mind, the Pro Line Energy S doesn't quite stand out as much as the original model. When you hit with the original elongated Pro Line Energy, you know right away that you're hitting with something unique. But the S model feels more like other hybrid paddles. On the other hand, the S model probably appeals to a much wider audience than the original, given its more standard shape. And there are elements of the Pro Line Energy S that do separate it from the rest. It's just more of a subtle difference than the original model. That being said, at just over $150 using the code JOHNQ, I think this paddle is a steal. And I'm happy to say that Pickleball Apes is now including a neoprene paddle cover with the cost of the paddle. For raw paddle surfaces, these paddle covers really are necessary to protect against abrasions that reduce spin life. Pickleball Apes also has a generous warranty and return policy. They have a 30-day demo program where you can try out the paddle and return it at any time within 30 days for a full refund. I'm also not too concerned about delamination, disbonding, or core corruption with this paddle. Outside of 1 or 2 companies, these issues are becoming less and less problematic with thermoformed paddles, as paddle companies are using higher quality core materials with better quality control during manufacturing. I haven't heard of a single confirmed case of a corrupted core from all of the original Pro Line Energy owners. Overall, the Apes S is an easy recommendation for me. It'll appeal to a much wider demographic than the original hyper-elongated model, and it provides a good option in the hybrid thermoformed paddle space for people looking for a slightly more muted-feeling paddle that still has the capacity for good power and pop. Thanks again for watching, and please don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons. According to YouTube metrics, about 75% of my channel's viewers are not subscribed. So if that's you and you enjoyed this video, join the club. And stay tuned because I've got a lot of things in the works before the year's end.